Hello and welcome to the Profitable Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and as the founder of the Bold Life Movement and a fellow coach for more than 7 years, I know the challenges that many of you face when launching or growing your coaching business. And I'm here to pull back the curtain on the coaching industry and help you overcome roadblocks to make the impact you were born to make. Each week, I'll be interviewing successful coaches from every corner of the industry to share exactly how they have managed to generate massive impact and income. From strategy to psychology, we cover it all. This show is presented to you by Transformation Academy, a global marketplace of courses and coaching certifications. So whether you are already part of our epic community or you're brand new to this show, if you're ready to learn what it takes to turn your passion for service into a profitable business, then keep listening. You are in the right place. Welcome back to the Profitable Coach Podcast. This is episode number 28 with Kyle Lipton. Kyle is a comedian, he's a psychic, he's a transformation mentor, and he is someone that I appreciate so much because I found him on Instagram due to one of his spiritually satirical comedic videos, and I just binged his content. I thought it was so funny. I related to it so much and was really grateful that he was so approachable. And I think that's just such a testament to how accessible most people are. They're way more accessible than you think. And in this episode, we talk about some really magical moments that have come into Kyle's life because he was willing to trust his intuition, to put himself out there, to keep showing up, to embrace the magic and really lean into the discomfort, I should say, of showing up even when you don't know how it's going to turn out. So reaching out to Kyle is a great example of that. There are going to be many moments in your coaching business when you're going to need to just trust that putting yourself out there is going to yield dividends. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. We have a really fun conversation waiting for you. So without further ado, please welcome the one and only Kyle Lipton. Hello. Welcome back to the Profitable Coach Podcast. Welcome to the show, Mr. Kyle Lipton.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. I'm so excited to share your special flavor of coaching and comedy and wisdom with the Transformation Academy audience. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I don't call myself a coach. I call myself a mentor. And the reason why is because I found for what I like to do, I found pinning myself with the label as coach, limiting for the scope in which I support people with transformation. So I just want to add that in there.
I relate to that. I love that. So before we get too far in, I just wanted to, get you a little. For those of you who aren't watching on YouTube, I'm cleansing Kyle. I'm saging him from afar because I just feel like one of the things that I appreciate so much about Kyle is that he doesn't take himself too seriously. And the communities that we find ourselves in, both spiritually, relationally, and in the coaching world, a lot of people take themselves really seriously. So I wanted to bring you in to just remind the audience that coaching, mentoring, teaching, transforming can all be fun, and we can do it in our own unique ways. So with that, Kyle, will you tell me how you came to be a transformational mentor? What was like your catalyst moment?
I don't know if there was one specific moment, but there's a few that come to mind. I got into personal development when I was 14 years old. I grew up playing basketball with a dream of playing professionally. And one of the things that I noticed as a pattern is I would train and practice harder than anyone I knew. But when the lights came on, I got scared, I got fearful, and I got nervous. And who I knew myself to be as a basketball player and my potential versus what I demonstrated was very different. And I was reading affirmations in the toilet stall before the games. I was watching YouTube videos on how to build mental toughness. I've been really, really blessed to have some amazing mentors and people that I've gotten the opportunity to work for and learn from. And in 2016, 2015, I remember hosting a free group that I did a lot of real, what do you call it, kind of rapid fire coaching. And I finished after coaching and supporting like 5 or 6 people in that group. And I felt this sense of this is one of the things that I'm supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
And it just came over me. And there's been so many iterations and so many different phases of myself. But that was a really powerful moment because I got to see just how much I had to offer someone else in terms of supporting them with really just coming back home to themselves and their potential.
I love that. And so, what were some of the early phases? A lot of our listeners are new coaches, aspiring coaches, and they're kind of like dealing with that degree of imposter syndrome and not really knowing, like, ooh, how do I go
Mm,
all in? So, what did going all in look like for you early on?
mm. I don't know if I would say going all in into one specific little niche was something that I really ever dabbled into. I
Mm.
remember though feeling a pressure when I was younger that I needed to fit a certain my name's Kyle and I help entrepreneurs between the ages of 35 and 42 realize their potential while living in the state of Washington. I never got into that kind of niche coaching, and I always felt like I needed to, or like that was going to be the thing that would shift things for me. But what I really realized was me being myself and me being fully expressed naturally had me gravitate towards my own lane, which in turn had me serving people from a place of me being in my own lane.
Mm.
And, one thing I like to say, because I had a lot of people who have come to me as clients and said they deal with imposter syndrome. And one of the things that I always like to remind them of is it's only the people of integrity that really struggle with imposter syndrome. And usually those aren't the people that are actual imposters, right? Because if you really were an imposter and you didn't care, you wouldn't be worried about being an imposter. You would just be like, this is who I am. I live in my delusion and life's great. But I've found that people who struggle with that or come up against that usually are in integrity, and they're so in integrity that they'll double check themselves all the time. And I say that they could actually use some of the confidence that the delusional imposters have because we need more people of integrity out in the world sharing their gifts.
Yeah, 100%. I love that.
Yeah.
I heard that not too long ago. Imposters aren't trying to not be imposters. They know that they're faking it. That's their whole shtick. So
Yes.
if you're
A
worried
hundred
about it, you're
percent.
probably not an imposter.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is, or what are some of the different coaching genres or results that you've helped people to work towards over the years? I mean, it sounds like you've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, it's been almost a decade. One of the things that I've helped people, there's been so many iterations because I've had so many interests. So one of them, for a period of time, I did hypnosis. I helped people
Mm.
stop smoking. Other times, I help people come out and expose themselves into the world and start to share their gifts, whether that be coaching, whether that be speaking, whether that be men's work. And if I could synthesize what it is that I really love helping people with is coming into deep levels of clarity within themselves. And I just feel and I sense very deeply, which in turn helps me bring people to moments of realizing more of who they are. I'll give you a good example to kind of ground this in though. I
Love it.
remember I had a client of mine who came to me and we did a 30-minute session, which was a combination of a psychic reading and a transformational session. One of the things that she had shared with me was she hadn't gotten her menstrual cycle in a year. And what I got when I was tuning into her was there's a part of her that isn't connected to her own feminine energy. And in the session, I helped her connect deeper into that. And then, we finished our session. 2 weeks later, I get a message that says, I was sitting on my white meditation cushions meditating, and I looked down and my cushions were filled with blood. And while I can't take credit for that, I'm grateful that I could play a small part in that person's transformation and just just seeing things and I like to bridge the mystical with the practical, right? So making you aware of something inside of yourself, and but also giving you practical tips to moving more towards your soul.
Mhm. I love that. And,
Yeah,
psychic, comedian, transformational mentor, these are a lot of very different hats that you wear. How did you
yeah.
develop your practice, your intuition and then your bravery to step forward as a psychic? What does that mean for you?
I love these questions. I think I was just so excited by all things spirituality, all things personal development. Like I did everything from Tony Robbins to ayahuasca ceremonies to, tantra workshops. Just I was so excited to just get my hands in anything that I felt would bring me closer to myself and bring me closer to growing as a human being. And in terms of your question around um, how did I actualize more of my intuitive abilities, I had a
Mm,
mentor of mine, and one of the things that he shared with me is you can start to become more intuitive and connect with your intuition more by trusting your first thought. So I
mm,
practice that, right? And it could be as small as go to Whole Foods right now and buy almond milk. And you look in your fridge and you're like, but I have a lot of almond milk. I don't need more almond milk. And then, you walk to aisle 7 or wherever the almond milk is and you meet someone who you're supposed to meet.
mm,
And I had a moment where I was in Santa Monica, California, hanging out with one of my friends, and I saw this vision of his soul being strangled. And I remember telling him this as we're just walking down the street at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And he looks at me. You could see he was a little bit startled and put off because he actually had a lot of blockages in his throat. And what I realized and what's made it so fun for me is I'm not afraid to get something wrong. But
mm.
the willingness to get something wrong has really actually helped me be so on point because I'm not operating from fear,
Yeah.
right? And it can be awkward as fuck sometimes. I hope I can curse, but
You can curse.
um, okay, great. I remember when I was living in New York City, I was at a party in Central Park, and there was a woman that I had just met, and my intuition said she has something going on with her liver. Tell her. And I remember just being like, well, I just met this person 8 seconds ago. Well, I guess I'll find my moment to do that. And I told her that, and she's like, yeah, I do have something going on with my liver. And so what's really helped me and what's been very fun with it is realizing that life only gets better when I trust my intuition and I trust those inklings. And all it leads to
Mm.
is more synchronicities and magic. And I just literally get to watch it all unfold by trusting it. And uh, there's so much I want to say here, but
Keep
another
going.
thing was in 2019, and before that, when people would ask me what I did, I remember I would feel fear at times and tell them I'm a life coach. I'm kind of like a life coach because I was afraid to own who I was.
Mm,
But I had this really powerful realization that we can't make magic normal unless we talk about it like it's normal. So, to the degree that I'm hiding it is to the degree into which I can't actualize the potential of it. It's like GPS, right? If I tell someone I'm a psychic and I support people with transformation versus I tell someone I'm a life coach, the energetics of that, it would be akin to telling someone I'm in New York, but I'm really in Los Angeles. So that person who is trying to look for me can't find me because I'm not owning who I am.
mm.
And yeah, I remember being in my elevator in the apartment I was renting in New York, and one of my neighbors was like, "So, what do you do, man?" And I remember looking him so dead in the eyes and said, "I was a hypnotist, I'm a psychic, and I'm a comedian." And I just paused, didn't justify, didn't try and explain it. And he looks at me and he goes, "I might need to do a session with you."
Of course he did.
And and moments like that really just affirm that it's safe to be who you are, and it's actually beneficial to everyone to be who you are.
Yeah. I talk about this inside my various coaching containers, like the Pygmalion Effect. People will see you the way you see yourself. So if you're unwilling to see yourself as a psychic or a writer or a coach or an expert, then other people don't feel the invitation to see you as that. And if you see yourself as not worthy of certain accomplishments or desires, then other people are going to see you as not worthy of those accomplishments or desires. So owning it is step one. Finding
Yes.
people to support that, whether that's mentors or community, step two, and then taking that divinely inspired action, trusting the intuitive hits that come and seeing what
Yeah.
happens, and just thinking of it all as like a big experiment.
And I love that you said that, because it really reminds me of, and one thing I love to remind all my clients is that we are creating in every single moment. We're creating our reality. So I'll give you a good example. Have you ever met someone who's always overwhelmed, always is doing shit for other people, complains about how much they're doing, and then the moment you offer them help, you can feel they're like, no, 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 I'm good.
Yeah.
That person is literally addicted at some level, or very familiar with that emotion, and they just keep finding ways to come back to the identity that they know themselves to be, which is, I'm always exhausted, I'm always helping people, no one ever helps me. And if you keep telling yourself, and if you keep living in that paradigm, you won't even be aware of how many people are actually trying to show up for you that can't, because you literally put up an energetic psychic barrier to receiving
100%.
that which you really desire.
100%. And so for anyone who's listening to this that doesn't yet identify as a coach or a mentor or whatever it is that they're trying to cultivate, and that's why you're tuning into this podcast, I would look at what are the other labels and stories that you've been trying on and been practicing for a really long time, and which ones can you like set down and which ones can you pick up, given that no matter what you try on, it's going to manifest in your reality, both internally and externally.
100%.
All right, so I love this thread of what the evolution of Kyle looks like and what the evolution of your offerings and your brand and your creations. So tell me about when the comedic element got woven into the mix, and what were some new stories that you had to start telling about yourself to be able to step forward as that.
It's interesting because that part of me never was hard to access. I've been funny my whole life, humbly. And I was voted class clown in high school and all of these things.
Love
And
it.
even when I got into personal development, there was a part of me that was pulled back, observing, like, this is so fucking nuts. We're all dancing and jumping around and screaming in order to, like, come back to ourselves. But at the same time, I really got and honored
Why?
the transformative value in that. So I could see both. And
Yeah.
I think being intuitive and being comedic can be very akin to each other, because you're reading, you're observing, you're looking, and you're creating with it. So I did my first video in 2016. It went really, really amazing. And I do remember one thing that I can add to your question, which is I would have periods where I'd show up, I'd be consistent with videos, but I didn't see much fruit from it, other than, people discovering me, people coming into my world. But I had this story in moments of, well, you're not making money with this. You need to focus on, mentoring and doing that. But I could feel in moments, my soul was like, no, you need to be creating comedy. And it was last year. I was living in Peru. I had a poncho sitting on my bed, uh, a hat that I got from a San Pedro Wachuma ceremony. I had a rattle that I bought at a local market, and I had these glasses. And I remember seeing it. It was about 7:30, and I remember saying to myself, I have a pretty funny video idea. It's like, maybe I'll do it. Yeah. Let me go do it right now. And that video that I did, I think right now it's almost at 1 million views. And I went from years of being at, not that numbers are important, but just to kind of demonstrate, I went from years of being around 3,000 Instagram followers to blowing up and having so many more people follow me and follow my work as a result of me showing up for my purpose. And it was really, really powerful, because in that moment, after that video went viral, I made an internal decision that I'm fully committing to this. And the funny part is all the story that I had about I'm not making money from this, I need to focus on other things and blah, blah, blah. I've actually made more money, had more clients, had more people come into my world because I decided to step into it. And just so many amazing opportunities. And one thing that really was demonstrated to me, which a friend shared with me years ago, was that abundance is being the abundance of yourself. And the more yourself you are, the more abundance naturally starts to occur because as we're talking about, as within, what is it? As within, so without. I'm
As
butchering
above,
it
so
here.
below.
As above, so below. There we go. So I really got that by me stepping into the fullest expression of myself, my life will only become more magical and more incredible. And then that kind of started the commitment on a deeper level.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Abraham Hicks?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they talk about getting into the vortex and that just being the flow. Like flow and ease is actually nature's law. Like that is what we're supposed to feel and we're supposed to experience.
Yes.
And I think of you stepping into alignment with yourself being a permission slip for the universe to step into alignment with you. And
Mm.
spirit, whatever, was just waiting, being like, oh, Kyle, we didn't give you that class clown award for nothing. Like, what are you doing over there? And the moment you were like, oh yeah, I'm going to sell that. Like, this is me. I'm just going to show up fully. The universe was like, finally, we've been waiting. And I think that whether that's comedy or writing or poetry or some other gift that the people listening have in their own lives, giving yourselves the permission slip to just put it out there and trust and let yourself feel that sense of flow and alignment is going to bring opportunities into your life that you now cannot even imagine.
You nailed it.
I have a question for you. What was the Tony Robbins events? What were the Tony Robbins events that you went to?
I did one Unleash the Power Within,
What
and
year?
then
What city?
2016 in Los Angeles, I believe it was, or
I was
2015, one of the
there.
two. That's
I
so
was
cool.
there.
So we've been in each
So
other's vortex for a minute.
for sure. I find this to be the case a lot, actually, becoming connected with people later who I was in the same room as years before.
Hmm.
But
For sure.
I resonate so much with your material because I also connect with the concept of like being in on the cosmic joke. It's like, yeah, do these things, like go take the medicines, do the personal growth, jump up and down, yell, scream, laugh, cry, sigh, breathe, like do all the things. And also like don't take yourself so seriously. It's
Yeah.
all of this. And on that note, one of the things that I did, one of my bold moves from the past, my business is called the Bold Life Movement for any new listeners who aren't familiar with my personal brand. And I was at a Tony Robbins event. JP Sears was there. Are you familiar with JP Sears?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you know him back when he had the ultra spiritual brand?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So for those of you who don't know who JP Sears is, he's this like redheaded comedian guy who got his start by being a mentor, being a coach, and identifying as being pretty spiritual, but also realizing how ridiculous the spiritual community is. And he would create videos about being ultra spiritual. And so I saw
Mhm.
him at a Tony event, and everyone was going up to him and getting pictures and fanboying and girling. And I saw him and I was like, hey man, love your stuff. Like, great to see you. Keep it up. And then I went home and I created a video in his style. Like I had the headband on. I had my hair was like even redder back then. My hair down. I was like doing the whole thing. And it was how to integrate after unleashing your power. So I was like following a Tony Robbins event when you get home, what you should do. And
Nice.
it was like very dry, very JP Sears style. And it ended up getting on his radar, ended up getting on Tony's radar and was like put in their inner Slack channel. But it was really just like a way of me expressing that side of my personality and like showing gratitude for JP's work And it's what led to him
Mm,
coming on the show and us having like a friendship. And so I say that as like a reminder that the more you lean into what feels fun for you and get over the perfectionism of it, the more opportunities come into your world.
mm-hmm. 100%. I like to say this, when you let go of trying to be perfect, your true perfection reveals itself to you.
I love that.
And so often we I need to be a coach who does this, this, and this, and I can't leave this little box. And I look at that and I go, but you're human and you're someone who has
Mm-hmm.
more variety in how you want to express and share in the world. Why limit yourself, and why be that representation for your clients and for your people to look at you and think you can only be one thing? Because your clients want to be more than just a little box. So you do
Mm-hmm.
everyone a favor by stepping out of it.
So, how do you merge the comedic, somewhat performer side of Kyle with the mentor, transformation inducing, perhaps somewhat more serious version? How does that look inside of a container with you?
I would say I don't merge them. It's just I'm just myself, right? So there is no compartmentalizing of who I am. And usually with pretty much every one of my clients, there's always a mixture of very deep laughter and tears and transformation and anger and all the shit that comes up in the process of becoming more of yourself. So I feel very grateful because humor is a beautiful transformational tool as well, and it can help someone shift their perspective in a second. And it's being artful to know when to use it and when to
Mhm.
hold space.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the misconceptions that a lot of coaches have, mentors, sorry, coming into the space is that they need to have it all figured out. It needs to look a certain way. It needs to look like what they're seeing on social media, etc. Where in fact, this is like one of the very few professions or paths that someone could choose to go down where all you have to do is be yourself and be of service. And the more you that you are, and the more of service that you offer, that you come from that place, the easier it is. And like the more aligned clients find you. They love your humor. They love your weirdness. They love your ability to cry at a compliment. That's me.
Hmm.
And you don't have to stress about being anything but yourself.
For sure. It's like music, right? There's a variety of different genres of music, and everyone has their own style, their own type of music. But all of the big ones in their respective genres have a bunch of fans. It
Yeah.
doesn't make one music better than the other. It doesn't make one music more significant than the other. They're all equally amazing for the people who love that type of music.
Yeah, totally. Who have been some of your favorite mentors, books, programs, whatever resonates over the years, and why?
So many. There's so many. I worked for a guy called Preston Smiles back in the day.
Hmm.
So I learned a lot from him, and we still have a friendship to this day. And another one of my mentors turned, yeah, probably one of my best friends, one of my best homies. His name's Orrin Harris. He's amazing, and
Mm.
I think one of the things he taught me on a real deep. I learn a lot by experiencing someone, a lot by osmosis. And there'd been so many times when we would be on adventures, and I would be I can remember one specifically, but there's so many. Every time we hang out, it feels like the veil is lifted. So, for example, I remember we were in Venice and I was driving around. We are going to go park and get something to eat. And I remember there was this story about there's no uh, parking spaces, it's traffic, and all of these things. If anyone's ever been to Venice or Los Angeles, you know what I'm talking about. And we both were just, we're going to manifest a parking spot. And time slowed down, and the holy grail, it was like Moses parted the sea of automobiles for for this space to come about, and park there. And it was just such a surreal moment and just such a great reminder of how much we're creating our own reality. And I'll remember, there's one more I want to share because it feels very significant and powerful, which is I was at his house for a mentoring session, and there was a dog that he was looking after that just kept freaking barking. It just wouldn't stop. And I remember playfully, with no real significant seriousness, just going, "You think you could make that dog stop barking?" And he could, I literally felt it all happen in real time. He connected with this dog.
Mm.
The dog, who was barking for probably 45 minutes to an hour, stopped and didn't make another sound for an hour and a half. And it was these little moments that really showed me just how thin the veil really is, and what it's like to live life more awake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have any awakening single moment that stands out to you where like nothing was the same after that?
For sure. How much time do you have?
On the recording, or I could talk about this shit all night.
Okay, cool. I have a story. It's a little bit longer, but I would love to share it if you would like to
We
hear
have
it.
we have time. We have time. Yeah,
Okay.
lay it on us.
So it's February 2nd, 2017. I was dating a woman who I'd met in LA, but she lived in Germany. And I was supposed to see her at the end of February. And my intuition just told me, check tickets from LA to Berlin right now. And I did. And I had about a $300 credit card to my name. That's about all I had. And I remember looking at the tickets, and there was a ticket one way from LA to Germany for $180. And I remember looking at it, and I was like, shit, should I buy it? Should I not buy it? And the only quote unquote problem was that the plane was leaving in 2 days instead of the end of February.
Mm.
So I had, but my entire spirit was just screaming at me, buy this ticket. So I did. And I felt so amazing afterwards, and I didn't know why. I just felt this beautiful sense of excitement. The very next day, a client signed up that literally was just out of the freaking blue. It was my neighbor who lived a block away from me. And I go to Germany, and it was a beautiful, beautiful time. I had more money now that I was just kind of in this continuous flow of trust, trusting that I would be
Mhm.
supported, trusting I would be provided for. There was a woman who I'd given a free session to 2 weeks before who actually lived in Berlin. I had
Mm.
no clue that I was going to be in the same city as her 2 weeks later. She ends up signing up to do like an 8 hour sort of private VIP one-on-one day with me. And which once again, it was almost like God had set up all of these people, places, circumstances for me if I was just willing to take the leap. All these
Yeah.
little chess pieces. And so I stayed a month there. Now I'm going to rewind time a little bit. About 5 months before I went to Germany, a Facebook friend of mine was getting her degree in mediumship, and she had 50 sessions she was offering as a way to practice and get certified. I took her up on one of them, and we were chatting, and she told me, I feel like you're going to have a really powerful activation in England. I had no clue. No one had ever told me that. So after my month in Germany, I decided to go to London. And the day my flight was leaving, I had a client who was supposed to sign up. At this point in time, I probably had about $55, $60 to my name. My first 2 nights booked with a friend, and that was it. Nothing but pure trust. And I just had this very gut feeling that this woman who was supposed to pay me that day was going to flake on me. I just felt it in my bones. So she sends me this message, and she goes, Kyle, I've decided I'm not going to do the mentorship and blah, blah, blah. And I felt this frustration come over me, and this anger, fear, frustration. And right after that, this is hours before I was heading out to London, my intuition said, go and do a Facebook Live, channel this frustration into content. And I did a Facebook Live, The Facebook Live ends. My intuition says, look to see who liked your video. I'm scrolling down. I see a guy that I had met one time who owns a wine company in California, lives in California. Someone says, click his profile. I click his profile. The first post is that him and his team were at the Raw Wine Festival in London. And I go, okay, well, fuck, I have to connect with this guy. So I reach out to him and he says, awesome, when you're in London, let me know. Me and my team will take you out to dinner. And I remember getting on this plane from Germany to London, scribbling in my journal, a little bit in scarcity fight or flight mode, just I exude luxury and abundance with every step and breath I take. I exude luxury and abundance. So I'll save a little bit of the hassle at immigration. I've learned my lesson. Never tell them exactly how much money you have because they have no way of verifying it. You should not tell them you have $60 in your bank account and you want to stay in London for 30 days.
This feels like an important takeaway for anyone who's invested too much in their coaching business lately.
Very important. And I sleep at the airport that night. I randomly just coach some dude from Norway at a coffee shop and help him out with some stuff. I get on my bus. The bus costs about 12 pounds, which at the time was about $18, so about a third of my net worth. I'm on this bus. Tears are streaming down my face. I'm like freaking out. I get to a coffee shop in London called Pret a Manger, and I'm WhatsApping with this guy who has the wine company. Very successful wine company, I might add. He's amazing, and his company is incredible. And I remember just sending him a text just saying, I really appreciate you taking me out for dinner. I've been going through a hard time and it just means a lot, or something along those lines. And every time I tell this story, I get chills because his response was, do you need help? And I was there in a moment where I could choose, do I want to present myself as having all my shit together and appearing someone different than who I was in that moment, or just honestly, vulnerably sharing what's going on? And I said, I do need help. I remember just saying yes. And he goes, okay, meet me at my hotel tomorrow. I'm going to give you 500 pounds cash. And there's a man I met one time, but this was like the divine. It was God, just had all these little chess pieces laid out for me. And I get there, and I'll never forget. He responded in WhatsApp before I got to the hotel. He just said, we're all just walking each other home. And he's wearing a trench coat. He takes all the money, slyly puts it in my hand, super gangster. And then he takes me out for dinner for like the next 2-3 nights. And when I tell you I'm eating at like the 5 of the 5-star restaurants that exist in London. And then I reflected, wow, what was I writing in my journal? I didn't have the money. I didn't have the resources, but I was writing, I exude luxury and abundance with every step and breath I take. And I got to see that physically start to manifest. So fast forward, when I tell you it was like money was just presenting itself. I had a mentor who didn't even know, I don't think, what I was going through. I hadn't shared any of it with him. He sends me $250. I remember getting the PayPal notification and going, the only message said, keep your head up and keep your heart open. No, I never shared with him where I was, what I was moving through. It was like God using that person to support me. And couple little other pieces here while I was in London. My girlfriend at the time, we were supposed to go to Bali the next month. At this point in time, I think I had about $500 in my bank account. And she was like, do you want to book our tickets on Thursday? We're FaceTiming. It's like a Monday. And I remember feeling the fear of going, I don't have it all. I have some of it, but not all of it. And my intuition just said, make a decision right now. So I said, yeah, let's book our tickets on Thursday. Hang up the phone. Open up my Facebook Messenger. I have 4 voice notes from a guy who the year before was in one of my free groups I led. He goes, dude, I just had a medium reading, and the medium told me there's a guy named Kyle who's supposed to help me with emotional issues. That Thursday, he signs up to be my client. I booked my ticket to Bali that Friday, and the really crazy part about all of this was That was my best month ever in my business. My business generated the most money that month. And yeah, it's, and just to add a little bit more crazy to the end of this story, the medium who
More
gave
crazy,
me
more crazy.
the medium who gave me that psychic reading or the medium reading, she lived in Las Vegas, but she was doing her fucking training at the same time as me when I was in London. And we end up meeting up and having lunch, and I get to just replay this amazing, incredible month to her after that entire experience. And what I really learned on the deepest level was that your intuition is like God whispering to you and giving you instructions, and your life will never get worse by listening to that. No matter what the physical world's saying, no matter what your circumstances are saying, your life will only get better if you listen to that. So you would be wise to listen to that. And it reminded me of a quote by Terence McKenna, who's like a psychedelic philosopher dude. And I'm butchering the quote, but it's this is how magic is done. You jump into the abyss and you realize that it's just the bed of feathers. And I learned that on such a deep, embodied, experiential level that I was never the same after that.
I mean, I eat this shit for breakfast. I love this stuff. One of the stories that I told to our Quantum Leap cohort, what was it, earlier this week, in my TEDx talk, it's all about how to avoid regret, which, spoiler alert, it's being bold. And so I talk about 3 different bold things that you can do. And the last story that I tell is all about trusting your intuition. And this is like a behind the scenes. I don't tell this in the TEDx talk because, you know, it's TEDx. You got to like maintain some level of credibility. But the story that I tell is in high school, I met a boyfriend on the internet. This is a very long time ago. Like there were no dating apps back when this happened. It was like an AOL chat room for the TV show Friends. That's how we connected. When we were in like 9th grade, we ended up dating like my junior, senior year, going to Mexico together, like lost our virginity to each other. It was very sweet. I don't tell those details. But what happened was when we split, because college, you know, life, he lived in the West Coast, I lived on the East Coast. We did not have a great parting of ways, and I was really sad about it. And so for like 10 years, I would have this recurring dream of us reconnecting, not romantically, just like pleasantly, platonically, mending things, right? And so 10 years later, I'm at this conference, which was like where the birth of the Bold Life movement happened. And I look him up because it happens to be where he lives. And I can't find him on social media. He like doesn't have anything easy for me to find him. And his employer had posted one image of the team on our like meet the team page. And so I was like, okay, well, I know where he works. And so I ended up getting my best friend who was there at the conference with me to get in our rental car. And I'm like, you got to take me somewhere. Like, don't judge me. I need to go do this thing. And so we show up at his work and haven't seen him in 10 years, by the way. So this sounds like a fucking crazy story. Like girls should be put behind bars kind of story. But I was like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. And my poor best friend, she's like sitting in the couch of the waiting room and she's just like leaning against the wall, like trying to be invisible. And I walk in, I ask the secretary, you know, is so-and-so working? And she's like, yeah. And she gets him and he comes out and he is wearing the same clothes and looks the exact same as he had been in this dream that I had had for 10 years of us reconnecting. And then he's like, do you want to get lunch? Like, let's catch up. And he's driving the exact same car that he had been in my dream for 10 years. Never had the dream after that, of course. But that moment is literally what led to me starting the Bold Life movement and radically changed my entire life. Because I just went home and I like wrote about it. And my friends were like, you got to tell this story. You always do bold things. Like people should know about this and be inspired. And I was like, okay. And so even if you sound effing crazy to yourself and others, if there's a part of you that just knows, it's going to be okay. Like this is meant for me. This is supposed to happen. Trust it.
That story reminds me so much of just really how deep the quote, fortune favors the bold, actually goes. Like people see these little sayings and they're just like, wow, that's cool, that's inspirational. But the depth of possibility of magic that is available when you really live into that quote is you can't even comprehend it. And I love that
Yeah.
story.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the first quote I ever shared under my Bold Life movement in
Of course.
2015. I know.
Of
Of course.
course.
Universal wink, just like, I see you kids. Keep it up. Yeah. So on that note, one of the things that I've created, I want to shift into a little bit of creativity conversation before we wrap, because I know that's something that you're really passionate about right now. One of the things that I've created to hold myself accountable and really invite other people onto what could be the best year of their life is a boldest year yet challenge. So every week I'm committed to taking at least one bold inspired action and then documenting it. And I have people tagging me in things on social media, texting me and being like, I applied for this job in another state. I quit my job. I like so many different things. And so anyone listening, if that appeals to you, if you want to get on board with making this the boldest year of your life and having accountability and support and people cheering you on, then follow me on Instagram at the Kimberly Rich, hashtag boldest year yet, and I'll share your wins with the community. So on that note, after a quick plug, Kyle, tell me why creativity is so important to you right now and why it's something that you're helping people to harness and master and
Mm.
cultivate more of.
I would say it's very much along the lines of I think creativity is more of a byproduct of who you become, of who you
Mm,
are, right? So when I think about being bold, that is really one of the biggest essences of creativity. It's can you be bold enough to share your art? Can you be bold enough to speak to what makes you feel alive or what you're passionate about or the kind of poetry that you've been wanting to share, but you're afraid because some person who bullied you in 10th grade follows you on Instagram, right? It's learning how to move through all of those limitations and step into that version of yourself. And what I like to do in every single one of my sessions, my groups, it's I love to make spirituality, I love to make expanding yourself um just just cut through the fluff, cut through the BS and get straight to the heart of it.
mm,
And that's really one of the things that's inspired me is because I've seen how much me stepping into my own creativity has done for my life, but also who I've become in the process. And I love to show people how much easier it is than they think by making stepping into your creativity practical, down to earth. You hold yourself accountable. And my intention with every single one of these groups is getting your best creative work out into the world in 8 weeks.
mm.
And it feels bold, right? Especially for someone who, is afraid or what's the word? Trigger shy, shy to pull the trigger on fully expressing themselves. But
Totally.
there's a way to do it by sharing some of these spiritual truths and helping people see more of their potential, but then also having a really grounded, practical, down to earth space in which they can step more into that, which could look like them sharing their poetry for the first time, them going to the next level in their music, them just having the courage to open up and speak. And there's all the little things that have to be dealt with in the process. Are you people pleasing? Are you trying to please dad?
Mm.
Are you afraid to speak because you think people are going to think you're crazy? And we move through all of those as a small group, and the end result, if that person is committed and willing to go all the way in, is a happier, more aligned, more creative version of themselves. And yeah, I love it.
I love that. Yeah. The most peace that I feel in my life is when I'm creating for the sake of whatever wants to come through me and
Yes.
not giving a flying F if other people like it because I like it. And if I stop liking it, then it's like, well, it wanted to be birthed anyway. So who cares? On to the
Hmm.
next one.
So good.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, what do you wish you had known when you were first starting your mentorship journey that new aspiring coaches and mentors could benefit from hearing?
So my I'll give you two answers. My true answer is I don't wish anything was different.
Mm,
I don't wish I learned anything different. I don't wish I had any piece of advice because I wouldn't be who I am if I had that piece of advice at that time.
yeah.
My second piece of advice, which I think speaks more to the heart of your question, is just stay in your own lane. Focus on what inspires you. Focus on what lights you up, even if it doesn't make sense to the coaching community, to uh, even to yourself. Just trusting the inklings and the impulses that want to come through you. And instead of trying to fit in a niche, you become your own niche. Your niche is you. You step into your own lane. And sometimes that might look like unfollowing a bunch of people on Instagram and just going, well, what do I want? What do I want outside of the noise? And when we turn the noise off and we go a little bit deeper inside of ourselves, we go, oh, actually, I don't even like talking about this stuff. I just did it because I heard it at a coaching conference. I really want to share about X. And then you start
Hmm.
sharing about X, and you find people who want to listen to X. And the last piece that I would say is don't worry about the numbers. This is one thing I taught in my first call that we just did with the creativity course is don't focus on the numbers. Just momentum is built on continuing to show up in a way that feels true, powerful, and authentic for you. You don't know when your moment is going to hit. I didn't know when I saw the poncho and the hat, like that was going to be a really big moment for me when I made that comedy video. But it really got me dialed into you never know when your moment is. You never know who's watching, even if they never comment, share, like. And in the process, you realize how impactful you are. There's a just to really nail this point, there's a woman who I know who's a therapist, and she was sharing how, I was doing this live stream and only 3 people were on my live stream, and I felt so discouraged. And then she tells me that live stream's done. That person was planning on killing themselves that day, but they saw her live stream, one of those 3 people, and they decided to take a different turn in their life.
Hmm.
And I just invite people to consider, imagine you have 5 people that like your stuff, that watch your video. Imagine walking down the street doing a little neighborhood stroll, and you have 5 people surrounding you, intently listening to you because they want to hear what you have to say.
Hmm.
Just because it's on a screen, I invite you to just make it a little bit more real. Those people are there and they want to listen to you. And I find that if you can make it more real, like we're all walking down the beach together, you'd give yourself more credit and you'd give yourself more props and recognition that there are people out there that want to listen to you and want to hear what you have to say.
I love that. That really hits. I remember being at Podcast Movement Conference in 2017, I think it was. And we were in a breakout session with Pat Flynn, and someone asked, like when do you decide to kind of pull the plug on your podcast if your numbers are just like not really there? And he asked, well, how many subscribers do you have, or how many listeners do you have? How many downloads, I guess, is actually the more accurate way of asking that metric. And he told him it was like 200 or something. And he's like, if you had 200 people in a room listening to you every week, would you just be like, nah? But because we're so used to seeing like millions of downloads or whatever by like the top podcasters in the world, we become like disillusioned with our metrics. And the idea of not just being in a room but like literally walking down the beach with them, yeah, if you had 5 people intently listening to you, what a powerful stage that is. Good lord, like what a gift. So what a really really good reframe. I love that.
Yeah, and stop comparing your chapter 1 or 2 to someone's chapter 15.
I say this all the time.
Yeah.
Or their chapter 100. Like you don't know about the
Mhm.
6 years of groundwork they've been laying.
100%. 100%. And I think it I just want to say one last thing because I just really like this thread that we're on. One of the
Mm.
first times I ever did stand-up comedy, I'm in Los Angeles, and there's a room of about 50 people, and they're all comedians. They're all taking their turn to practice. And it's one thing to do comedy for a crowd. It's another thing to do comedy for people that are like comedic savants who are not necessarily there to laugh. They're there to perfect their work. They're there to probably judge you and maybe pick you apart. And I remember I right before I was about to go up, I had the best joke that just came to me based on another guy that went up there. And in my head, I'm like, everyone's going to laugh. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to get a standing ovation. And I said the joke, and nobody laughed. And I remember sitting there humbled AF. But I remember leaving that night and saying to myself, I want to go mess up. I want to go bomb 100 more times. Right? Because then the win wasn't in the metrics. The win wasn't in the applause. The win wasn't in any of that. The win was in I just continued to show up. And the funny part is when you're not afraid to bomb, more of your potential naturally comes forth because you're not in fear anymore. You're not letting the fear of messing up stop you from showing up. And, even in my comedy show last year, it was amazing. So many people showed up, and there was a lot of moments of laughter, but then there were also moments of silence. And I remember thinking to myself, am I not funny right now? Like, what's going on? And I had people coming up to me after the show and say, the reason why some people weren't laughing or why I wasn't laughing, it wasn't because I didn't like what you were saying. It was because I was seeing if I was that character, I was that story. So, which really opened me up to, just because the metric I have in my mind of success doesn't actually always equate to what really is happening and what the truth of the moment really is, which was that they all loved it, but they were receiving it in a different way in that moment.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. It makes me think of a quote my friend Christian always says, if you're playing not to lose, you'll never win. And so if you're, like you said, if you're measuring by this metric, then you're ignoring how far you've come over here in this metric, and being the kind of person who becomes someone who shows the F up over and over and over is way more valuable than 50 people laughing at the one joke that you told out of hundreds of jokes you've told in your life. Like, way 100%. More valuable. Yeah.
100%.
So good. So good. Okay, Kyle, where can people go find you? Where can they go watch all these hilarious videos and get more of your magic?
You can find me on Instagram. That's the place where I hang out the most. It's just my name. It's Kyle Lipton, like the tea, but sweeter. And that's where I hang out.
Amazing. We will have that linked up in the show notes and any other juicy stuff that we shared tonight. Kyle, so fun getting to know you. I can't wait to see what evolves for you in the coming years. And thank you for just being your authentic, hilarious, magical self.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode with Kyle. If you want more information about all the different things we talked about, head over to theprofitablecoach.com/028 for episode 28. And if you want to submit some ideas that you have for future episodes, do me a favor, head over to Instagram @thekimberlyrich. You can DM me, let me know what you like about the show, let me know a topic or a person that you want us to feature. And I'm super excited because in the coming month, we have what I call the 7-figure series. That's right, I'm going to be interviewing 3 7-figure coaches and pulling back the curtain on what it takes to build a business at scale like that. Go through what are the emotional, the mental roadblocks that they've had to overcome. It's going to be really juicy. I cannot wait to share it with you. And what's more is we are actually in the process of enrolling our brand new students into the Coaching Confidence Accelerator. So if you want to embody the confidence that a 7-figure coach has, then I invite you to come into the CCA, the Coaching Confidence Accelerator, and join us for 8 transformational weeks where we really teach you what it takes to become an embodied, empowered, equipped, transformational coach. We talk about all the different ways that you can approach the coaching conversation. We talk about your unique brand and how you can really differentiate yourself in the market. And then what's really, really powerful about this container is that you have your coaching and accountability pods. This is where you get real world practice on becoming an empowered coach. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, then I want you to head over to theconfidenceaccelerator.com. You can get all the information. We kick off February 1st. This is an incredible opportunity, and I really, really hope to see you on the inside.